Hi everybody, here again, hope you're okay. Slightly changed the room now, as you can see. I've moved around a little bit. Hi John, how are we doing? I've moved around slightly, just a little bit, just so I can see things a little bit easier and what have you. I will just do my normal share to our friends at iFit Stuff. So it's connectors and manufacturers, solution to solve maybe some common issues. Just first question tonight is, which connectors would you say are waterproof? Okay, that's your first starter for 10. Which connectors are waterproof? The next one, what is the normal shrink rate of a standard? So if you buy standard heat shrink, what's the normal shrink rate? Okay. And the next size, what size cable will fit into a standard blue terminal? So it's blue marked. What's the standard fitment? Okay. So there's your first few questions. Don't forget, fill them in on your comments. Drop as many comments as you want. Chat as much as you like. Okay. So hello and welcome. Thanks tonight to Tim Consolanti again from the Mobile Centre. He's provided me with some connectors for this sort of demo night. Thanks to Tim. Heat shrink, step downs, heat shrink solder. We can talk about cool seal, which is another one. And then you've got solder and heat shrink, okay? Obviously, we have to go to the old school. And then we'll have a bit of Q&A session at the end. Right, I've got some answers coming through already. Anyone else want to put some answers through, because it starts more or less straight away on this tip. So here we go. So the connectors, standard connectors for gauge cable, and this goes across the board. It's 0.5 millimeters to 1.5 millimeters. It's red. 1.5 to 2.5 is blue, and then 4 to 6 mil is yellow. You've also got some real big ones now. I've got some here. I mean, this is a step down connector. I don't know whether you can see that clearly or not. Let me bring it back here. I'll tell you what, let's try me down cam. Let's have a play with me down cam. Here we go. So this is a step down connector. You can see that there. But you can see that that's actually red, and you can see that is some superside gauge cable there. Bring that into context. Is a yellow gauge cable here. So that's yellow gauge there, and you can see that's the yellow this side, and then that is. So we've got other colours now. We're starting to add up. So this one here, you can see is a step up or a step down from the thicker red gauge down to that our standard yellow gauge. Okay, so there are more. I will add another one to the mix. I was sent another one. Here's an important one for you. This is for 0.1 millimeter to 0.35, and it's a heat shrink bus. And if you look at that, the size of that compared to a, I've got a red butt here. There's the red butt connector. So there's your standard red heat shrink connector there, the clear seal one. Right, there it is there. You can see that there. There's the clear seal one there. Okay, this one is even smaller. So what this is designed for is, say you snip through one of those nasty little can wires that are literally only about 3 or 4 strands. You've actually got a crimp connector there for it. So I thought that would be handy to show you, say trying to solder them. You've actually got a crimp connector for those as well. And particularly when we go towards 48 volt, I think these are going to be in force even more. So there's a couple of little sort of outlets for you on sizes and what have you. Moving forward, when we talk about standard connectors. So when we talk about standard connectors, excuse me, I'm going to do me moving about. Go over to me tool chest, and I'll put my down cam back on again. When we talk about standard connectors, they're these. whoops, get him into line. There we go. Now, standard connectors, as Craig says, well done, Craig. 2.5 mil. So they're 1 to 2.5 mil gauge cable. Great piece of kit, but you know the score is you've got to use the right type of crimp tool. So going to the crimp tool. There's a crimp tool. Here's one I made earlier. Here's the crimp tool that I've got here. So you can see the type of crimp tool. It's got 2 jaws, and on those jaws you should see an indicator. So you can see on this that there's actually a marker left to actually prove that it's been crimped by the correct, you know, level of crimp. So that's a really, I don't know if you can see that or not. You can see that there's markers on the crimps to actually give an indication that you know, it's actually being done by the right crimp tool. So you can see, and you know, to get you an idea about which way these goes in, it should go in with the marker onto the external part, like so. Waste of crimp, here we go. So that way then you can see that there is a clear marker over the metal end, and then you can see that that's the wider edge, and you can see at the end that there's a properly sort of crimped connector. So that's a standard butt connector, standard butt connection. Now, if you're using standard butt connectors, I would say that that's probably one of the biggest problems that you'll get is not using the right crimp tool. Yeah. If you know, it should be ratchet, as we've talked about before, like this sort of style one. But they're not waterproof at all. You can make them waterproof. You can cover them with Heatshrink of a type, but I would say that it would have to be adhesive lined Heatshrink. More about that later. But beware of cheap imitations for these. If you get the wrong type of one, or if you pay the wrong type of money for it, then I'm afraid that you know it's going to come loose. So you know, there's the key message there. Heatshrink. Oh, now this is quite a big one. So Heatshrink. I'll go back onto my down cam again. Here's all my Heatshrink connectors. I've got loads of different Heatshrink connectors here. I have got some step downs as well, so I'll go over and get my Heatshrink as well. Heatshrink connectors as well. There's your ring terminals and what have you. So going down on this, there's the Heatshrink connectors there. So you've got obviously all your different sizes and what have you. We'll talk about the step down ones in a minute. But as with Heatshrink connectors, it's all about tooling. So there are tools available. I'll show you the tools that we've got here. So the one that I've got that one there, which is pretty good Heatshrink, pretty good crimp tool. It's ratchet. That's the main thing. It's adjustable, so you can adjust the tension of it. But my favoured one is this one. This has got a bit more of chunkiness to it, should we say? You can see that the jaws. Let me show you that the jaws are a lot more. You know, they're a lot more solid. It just looks a bit more of a, you know, more of a beefy tool when you actually use it as a crimp tool. You know, nice ratchet as well, and it's also made in Germany as well, so it's obviously going to be very, very good, of a good standard. In terms of crimping, it is just basically the only thing that you should be crimping with a Heatshrink crimp tool is just one side and only on the metal part, like so, like it is there, and then crimp down. So you're only barring onto the metal part of the crimp, as you can see there. Oops, let me move it into the middle. Okay. When we talk about the right type of tooling as well, we're also talking about the Heatshrink part of it. So, you know, the bare end of a lighter, or I have seen some of these. This is you know, quite effective. but it's still it's a blowtorch and it's a naked flame, unfortunately. What you can get instead, and I've got two examples of them here, is what we call a catalyst sort of style blowtorch, which, as you can see, hopefully I've got gas in it. Yes, I have. You see, it actually glows. So it's got an incandescent flame, and the great thing about that is it doesn't overheat the heat shrink sort of thing. So I'll show you what I mean. It gets a nice, gentle heat shrink sort of style, like so. So it never overheats. It never overheats the heat shrink, and this is the vital sort of tool that you'll need to do the other type of one. You can get other ones. There's this. That's the Draper version. I do like that because it does actually have its own sort of stand. So as you can see, it'll sit on a stand, and so you can use the cover as a stand. There are other ones available. You can see this one. This one's an eroder one. I like this one because it has it has an area where you put your heat shrink into, and away it goes, and it's just an instant sort of style thing. So I do like those. Yeah, very good for that. But those are your two sort of, those are your type of tools there. So correct crimp tool, the correct sort of blowtorch sort of incandescent heat shrink, and then also the correct, well, as I say, correct sort of type of heat shrink, sort of shrinking tool, heat tool, incandescent as much as possible. Okay, so those are the things that we talk about with heat shrink. There was another thing that we were going to talk about was this solution around step downs, because these are heat shrinks are the recommended version, the recommended sort of way that we should now be connecting to motor vehicles in most sense. I know there are others. I know there's the heat shrink solder tool, which was mentioned as well. But if we look at those, let me just click this. There we go. These are the ones that are accepted by some manufacturers, as we've said. They can be waterproof as well. One, if they're done correctly, and also if they're done with the correct type of heat shrink as well. So if it's adhesive lined in the middle, but you can get water-resistant heat shrink connectors as well. So as I say, correct tooling is the key. The right crimp tool, the right heat shrink tool, and you're on to a winner. But these are the things that interest me the most, these step-ups. So where we have got to use these, and let me just go back to me down cam, these are the step-ups here. Where we have got to use these where we have got to use like this splice sort of version where we have to cut the actual manufacturers, which, by the way, I think is really, really cuts the mustard with me, it really grits me, is I think that this sort of solution here, oops, let me bring me down cam in a bit better, there we go, sorry about that. These ones here are, I think they probably work quite well in that sort of circumstance, because if you've got to connect, if you've got a wire, so we say, like as an example, where we're connecting into something like this, and then we've got to splice this in, or when you then put it in, you've obviously got a thicker gauge, and you're trying to squeeze it into, a little red one or maybe a little blue one, and you've then got the wrong type of gauge connector on the other end, if you see what I'm saying. So, on the one side you'll have a single cable, but on the other side you'll have the double cable. I mean, you tell me, do you think that that's a good solution to this problem that we have with splicing cables? I don't know. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the, do you think that's a really good idea? And is it an idea to use these type of step down connectors? And they are in varying. You can get them in varying sort of, as I say, sizes. About the only thing it doesn't do, and it was a solution I was looking for, was actually to go from, say for instance, from yellow down to red, where someone's connecting, going from a thick gauge cable off a vehicle to a device that was only a thin cable, and that was a shame really, because I knew that I could find a really good solution for it. So that's your heat shrink, and the varying sizes, as you can see. That's your heat shrink step down connector. So could be used as adding a splice. I don't know. Leave your comments. Let's see what you think. What do you think of that? The next thing is the heat shrink solder connection. I've got some of those. Again, they're in varying sizes. There's my little down cam. I'll show you them now. There's the. I'm sure you've all seen these before. This is the heat shrink solder connection. There they are. Now, yeah, they're fantastic again, and great for what they do. And we've been told, and I think it was Eddie. Yes, I think it was Eddie that told me that Eddie Lamb. He said that these are actually the ones that Ford like us to use, and I think yeah, they're all right. I've used them. I've had a go with them. I've had a play with them and stuff. But the key thing about these, and that's the most important thing, is we go back to tooling. And I would say that if you are using these, you've got to be using some decent heat shrinking sort of tools. Tell me what you think. Leave me comments. Because this is the key thing: is it's the right tools for the job. You can then use things like this, and they do work, really, really well. And are they waterproof? Again, I would say that they're probably water resistant. They're a lot more resilient maybe than even proper as a standard heat shrink connector. Are they as good? I'll leave you to leave comments about that and see what you think. There's all your connectors. Now, heat shrink. So we're on to heat shrink now. So this is if you're going to the conventional idea of soldering, or maybe you want to use them for protecting, shall we say, a butt connection or something like that. And we've got some. I'll put some down cam. There we go. I've got some heat shrink here. Here we go. Again, I'm going to mention the same sort of thing. It's key to have the right tool for the job. If you start using a lighter or a blowtorch like what we have there, like that sort of style thing here, this blowtorch style thing, I really don't think it's I'll bring it on properly. These sort of style things, I don't really think they scorch more than anything else. So again, the incandescent incandescent blowtorch, like the ones we see here, absolutely ideal. But the key thing here is, and this is something again that I only just found out not long ago, was that heat shrink, as believe it or not, and I can believe it as well, has a shrink rate. And the standard shrink rate, as we've, one of the answers, as we say, is 2 to 1. So if you've got standard heat shrink, like you can see this here, this has come from a box of heat shrink. There it is, Draper, good old Draper. Is that this heat shrink is 2 to 1, and it's actually better to have a higher rate than 2 to 1, because then you don't need as much heat shrink with you, because it obviously will shrink down from 4 times its size down to 1. And it's actually much better to have a higher grade heat shrink on board, because you don't need as much of it. Basically, you just have to carry certain sizes. So it's a really good way. Is heat shrink water resistant? Not really. If you're gonna go for waterproof, you've got to go for adhesive line heat shrink. And there is a drawback to using adhesive line heat shrink. As you can see there, it's brittle. That's the problem with it. Really, that is all there is to say about heat shrink. But real key thing there is whether you guys knew that or not. I didn't know. Tell me if you knew. So here's my answers. Which connectors are waterproof? Well, depending on if they're done correctly, they can be up to, and if heat shrink's done correctly, and it sort of goes and it's done with the correct tooling, and if you've got the right type of heat shrink connector, they will bond to the insulation that's on the cable. I think I have an example here. Oh, I forgot to mention something, because on the start of the course I did mention another thing, didn't I? And I was talking about waterproof connectors, and here they are. Here's the waterproof connector. So this is it. It's been advertised quite a lot recently. This is the cool seal connector. So here's some various types of connections with the old cool seal. And the way it's quite a cool piece of kit actually. The way it works is that it's basically there's one there. There's another blue one. What it does is there's no heat shrink involved in this. So there's no heat because it's a cool seal. So all you do is use your standard. Where's my crimp tool? So you use a standard heat shrink crimp tool like so. There's your heat shrink crimp tool. And what happens is the action of putting the cable into the hole, and you can see it goes into that hole, it seals the hole. This is an anaerobic, there's an anaerobic sort of compound that's there, that orangey bit there that you can see down there. And what happens is the action of putting the cable inside there seals it through and basically starves it of oxygen, and that makes it go off. And it goes off to about 80% off by within 24 hours, and then within 48 hours it's fully gone. So it goes off completely within 48 hours. And that's one definite heat shrink crimp tool. That's a definite sort of cool seal waterproof connector. You can see how waterproof it is actually. So that's your cool seal. Almost forgot about it. Sorry guys. They're available like this. There it is there. You can see the component down the middle. You see that there? That's the anaerobic compound that once the oxygen is starved from it, it basically goes hard. So there's your connectors that are waterproof. So what's the normal shrink rate of standard heat shrink rate? It's 2 to 1. And then what size cable will fit a standard blue terminal? As we've said, we've talked about this. This is 1.1 to 2.5. All right, guys, any more questions and answers? Because we're going to go into Q&A. Leave any comments now. If there's anything you fancy or anything you like, get in touch with me. Drop me a message. Oh, I'll have a look at me questions and answers. There we go, Craig. Blue, yes, blue is a grand term. Are there any actually waterproof? Yes, there are. That's them there. That's them cool seal connectors. They are fully waterproof. Okay. Let's have a look at some other questions. Hi, everybody. That's please thank you for tuning in and everything. By the way, thank you, Craig. I have 1 to 3. Yeah, 1 to 3 is a good rate, but actually 1 to 2 is the standard rate. I've been told, been reliably informed. Yes, those connectors are IP rated, by the way. Adrian, yes, thanks. Just be careful as JLR only recommend their own part number. Yes, I have checked with JLR. I've got on it, just like you, Aid. I've managed to get myself an inside man. He's after sales. So I'm getting this, as we speak, I'm getting this looked at, Aid, because, like I say, they're blooming expensive, the ones from there. Oh, here we've gone from Aid again. Hi, Jace. We only use adhesive line heat shrink as per manufacturer, and also we use Raychem. What make is the blue catalyst heat blower? It's a Draper. So I got that off. Yeah, I'll put my down cam back on. There we go. So it's a Draper. There it is. There, really good piece of kit, chaps. I saw it on Amazon, and I thought that's mine. It's going in the bag straight away. One of those. I've got to say, it's one of those lockdown purchases. It was fantastic piece of kit though, and the great thing I like about it is, as I say, you don't burn your hands. Here we have I'm going to have a reg moment here. There we go. So you can put it on the desk, and you can heat shrink to your heart's desire. Let's have a bit of a. I'll have a little bit of a heat shrink fest. Here we go. There's one that I've already done. There we go. So put a little bit of heat shrink. There we go. Like so. Just nice and easy. Make sure it's not spitting. There we go. Turning down a little bit. There we go. Just look how cool that is to do. You know, so easy to So easy to do when you've got the right tools, isn't it, guys? So there you go, Stu. Do you like that? Question: are there any connector brands that are good to stick with? VAG prefer the Heatshrink connectors too. Yes, I would say, Craig, definitely the weapon of choice seems to be these Heatshrink connectors. Although, like I say, because of the varying levels, I do like these step-down ones as well. Like I say, the step-down ones, I like the idea of them because the fact is that you can still, instead of having to squeeze it, like for instance, say like if you've got a blue one and you're trying to get two connectors in, you've gone down to like that sort of gauge cable, and because your tracker cable is, oops, there we go, I'll get myself in camera. So you've got a nice thin cable like that. I mean, the idea about that step down is that step down will still work with that gauge cable, and then you can put, the other side in, and then you can join two, like you say, you can join those two cables together and chuck that in there, like so. So it is, I do like that idea. And what do you think? But it is, most people, Craig, are going with the Heatshrink version. Like I say, that up until when Eddie told me that Ford were with them as well. So as far as I know, it's VAG, it's Ford up to a point, but I believe it's still, although Eddie said it's sold for the Heatshrink solder, I believe that there's also, I also think Ford's still onto it because it's still in their manuals that they send out to all the LCV guys. They use Raychem. JLR, as we said, and there's varying others as well. And like you said, VW like us to use them on there, the whole group. So that pretty much covers it. Peugeot, really, the French, the PSIA lot, they really just don't want us to use anything. I made an inquiry with PSA to try and find out about connectors and stuff, and they just don't want us to connect to anything to the car. They don't even want us to do nothing. And how's that going to work? How do you sort of tell that to a customer? Sorry, you can't have a tracker fitted to your vehicle because Peugeot don't want you to do it. So a bit of a crazy situation that is, really. I think, I'm sorry to say, but that's something maybe that we can sort of work on together, and maybe we can do something about. So that's about it for tonight, folks. Thanks ever so much for watching. If you want to leave any more comments, please leave some comments now, because it's always nice to leave some comments on the way out, and I can put them all up on the screen. Okay, so I'm off to have my tea. It's fish fingers tonight, parsley sauce, mashed potatoes, and peas. What do you think of that? That's my favourite, actually. But anyway, thanks very much for watching. Hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening. Have a good night and everything. And bye-bye.